Motherhood is Murder contains graphic and explicit content that may not be appropriate for all listeners. Discretion is advised. Well, hello, and welcome to episode 19 of Motherhood is Murder. My name is Valerie Cation, and we are, for lack of a better way of saying it, we're in a monsoon. It is here in Massachusetts and most of New England. There is just about every day we're getting deluging rain. So today's extra were tornado warnings. The New England area in Massachusetts is not necessarily a place where warnings don't occur, but when they do, it's kind of a big deal because they don't occur all the time. So I love the tornado warnings this morning, early in the morning, waking everybody up on a Sunday morning if you get the weather alerts, right? And just a lot of rain, a lot of flooding. Some of you may have heard of some of the really wild flooding in Vermont that's been happening. New Hampshire is having a lot of rain coming down off the mountains, which is culminating in quite a bit of flooding down below into the lakes area. So we've got a lot going on here. Last year was a drought. There was no rain whatsoever. It was sunny every day. And now it's a lot of rain. So I guess over the past 2 years, we've canceled the other out, right? We're even now, right? Anyway, hopefully that rain will start to let go so we can have a little bit more sun to our summer. But in the meantime, we'll enjoy the warmth. It's also pretty humid out here, but we'll deal with that as it is. And New England, no matter what the weather is, unless it's like 75 and perfecto. My perfect is like an 80, but that's okay. But like 75 or 80 and perfectly sunny without humidity, we're going to complain. That's just the way it's going to be. All right. So today's case is actually going to be a two-parter. I really had hoped I could get this into one part. This story is simple and complex all at the same time. And so we are going to cover the first part of it, and then part two will cover some of the content I couldn't get into or get enough information quickly enough to really do the story justice. And so part two is not only giving me some extra time to put this content in together in a really great and cohesive way for you, but also to get some clarification on some of the questions around the case. So I really did not feel prepared to do that this week. So I hope next week gives me a little extra time to put that together so that it's well prepared and researched for you. This is the disappearance of Maura Murray, part one. Sometimes when looking into a case, we can bite off a bit more than we can chew in one episode. As I said, I had originally planned to cover the disappearance of Maura Murray in one episode. However, due to the complex nature of the case and ongoing developments, I have decided to make this a two-part episode. Part one, we'll discuss Maura's early life and events leading up to her disappearance. Part two, we will discuss the search for Maura, theories, and recent developments. Also, just to preface, the Maura Murray case is an ongoing investigation. Further information can be found on the website mauramurraymissing.org, which is linked in the show notes. If you have information that might help investigators and the family in the case, click the link to submit a tip through the New Hampshire Cold Case tip line. That link is also located in the show notes. Maura Murray was born May 4th, 1982 in Brockton, Massachusetts. She was the youngest of 4 children to parents Fred Murray, a medical technician, and Laurie Murray, a nurse. Maura also had an older brother, Fred, and 2 sisters, Kathleen and Julie. Raised in Hanson, Massachusetts, in an Irish Catholic home, Maura lived predominantly with her mother following her parents' divorce when she was 6 years old. Throughout her school years, Maura excelled in just about everything she did. She participated in many sports, including competitive AAU basketball, which afforded her an opportunity to travel throughout the country. She graduated at the top of her class at Whitman-Hanson Regional High School, where she was also on the track team. The following is a quote from the Maura Murray Missing website, referring to how much she excelled during her high school education. Quote, a fierce competitor, she consistently finished in the top tier of runners in the state of Massachusetts and broke several long-standing school records. Selected as a Boston Globe All-Scholastic in cross country, Maura qualified for the U.S. National Scholastic Outdoor Championships in the 2-mile as a sophomore in 1998, finishing 33rd in the country. So this is not an ordinary person. She's clearly highly excels in sports, in running, in competition. Very, very skilled, very, very bright individual. Maura accepted a congressional nomination from the late Senator Edward Kennedy to attend the United States Military Academy at West Point, New York, following high school graduation. Her sister Julie also attended West Point. Maura joined the cross-country and track teams at West Point and studied chemical engineering for 3 semesters. Realizing that military life was not for her, she transferred to UMass Amherst following her freshman year to study nursing. The new UMass Amherst nursing program is notoriously difficult to get into, which is a testament to Maura's intelligence and determination. Again, not your average person just kind of doing their best to get through life. This is someone who excelled a lot and consistently and did well on a number of different levels, academically as well as in sports and athletics. Shortly after she began her coursework at UMass Amherst in November 2003, Maura admitted to using a stolen credit card to order food from several restaurants, one of which was in Hadley, Massachusetts, which is the next town over from Amherst. And if you're unfamiliar with Amherst, so I went to school at UMass Amherst about 10 years before Maura was there. And was it 10 years? Yeah, I guess so. Wow. Anyway, and so you have the college campuses, UMass Amherst being the largest college campus in the area. It's like a mini city over there, right? It would take me 20 minutes to walk from my dorm to my class. That just gives you an idea of how big that space is. And there are restaurants and things in the little downtown area of Amherst. But if you go kind of down Route 9, into Hadley, that's where your bigger kind of chain stores will reside. So say we've got, they might have like a Stop and Shop. I think they used to have a Chili's when I was down there, and Applebee's. Like there's going to be, bigger restaurants. I don't know what's there now. I haven't been there for a long time, but a lot more of a built up area between Amherst and Northampton as you're following down Route 9. So Hadley is just super close to campus is what I'm trying to say. So those restaurants would have been restaurants you would go to if you wanted to get off of campus and away from the downtown Amherst area. So these charges were dismissed following 3 months of good behavior. So you could say, looking at this, that seemed like atypical behavior for Maura Murray. Hard to tell. I mean, we've done a whole episode on looking at psychologically what uncharacteristic behavior looks like. So, I mean, I don't know enough about Maura's background as a child or anything to give more credence to understanding this situation. This is something to note, something I found. So I thought I'd mention in there as something that came up while she was in Amherst at UMass. On February 5th, 2004, while on duty at her job as campus security, she spoke on the phone with her sister Kathleen. They discussed Kathleen's problems with Kathleen's fiance. At 10:30 p.m. that same evening, while on shift, Murray broke down in tears. To give you an idea, campus security is set up like right at the doors to enter each residential area. Campus security is responsible for checking people in and out and maintaining watch over the front lobby. The spot where Maura would have been sitting would have been highly visible to people coming and going through the building. You want your campus security to be highly visible. So if, say, someone's staying overnight, they can sign in. Again, who knows what the process is nowadays? I'm sure it's changed from when I was there, like so long ago in the 90s, but maybe in 2004, the process wouldn't have changed all that much. So she would have been highly visible there. So she broke down in tears. This would also be very visible and would be noticeable to others that she was upset. When Maura's supervisor arrived to check in with her, Maura appeared, quote, zoned out and also, quote, unresponsive. Her supervisor escorted her to her room at 1:20 a.m. and asked her why she was upset. Maura only responded, quote, my sister. It was later revealed in October of 2017 that Kathleen had been a recovering alcoholic in 2004 and had been discharged from rehabilitation or a rehab center that morning. On her way home, Kathleen's fiance had taken her to a liquor store and she had had an emotional breakdown, which is very, very understandable. She had just gone through rehab. She's getting her life together. Beyonce picks her up, takes her to a liquor store. Give me a break. No. So this was the conversation they were having on the phone. And this absolutely may have explained Maura's concern for her sister, worried about her sister, hoping her sister would be okay, and would explain why she was upset and unresponsive that evening during work hours. So a couple of days later, on Saturday, February 7th, Maura's father, Fred, arrived in Amherst. He and Maury went car shopping. Then later, they both went out to dinner with a friend of Maura's. Maura dropped her father off at his motel room and took his Toyota Corolla to return to campus for a dorm party, arriving to the party at 10:30 p.m. At 2:30 a.m. on Sunday, February 8th, she left the party. At 3:30 a.m., while en route to her father's motel, Maura struck a guardrail on Route 9 in Hadley, causing $10,000 worth of damage, which in 2022 was the equivalent of $15,500. So 15,500. So that would have been the equivalent today. The responding officer wrote up an accident report, but there was no documentation of a field sobriety test. Maura then drove to her father's motel where she stayed. At 4:49 a.m., cell phone records showed a call placed to her boyfriend from her father's phone, but the content is unknown. On Sunday morning, Fred learned of the damage to his car, and that damage would be covered by auto insurance. So that was good news. He rented a car and dropped Maura off at UMass, departing to go back to Connecticut, where he lived. And I believe he worked in Connecticut as well. I'm not quite sure, but I believe he lived and worked in Connecticut. At 11:30 p.m., Fred, who is Maura's father, called Maura to remind her to get accident forms from the R&V and that he would talk to her again on Monday night to discuss the forms and fill out the claim on the phone. Again, all pretty typical, I would say. Unfortunately, Maura went to a party, went to a dorm party on campus. Gauging by the time she arrived at 10:30 p.m. and left at 2:30 a.m. And I'm not sure the discrepancy between 2:30 a.m. and 3:30 a.m., that hour there. She could have been doing something else. She could have gone somewhere else and spent time with some other people. Maybe she didn't leave at 2:30. Maybe she did leave the party a little later, who knows? But based on those facts, the time of day, and then her driving and running into a guardrail, although she didn't have a field sobriety test given, I'm kind of thinking there might have been alcohol involved, right? I didn't see any discrepancies there in my research that said that there was not alcohol involved in that crash into the guardrail. So it's possible. I mean, because there's no field sobriety test and there was nothing absolutely proven, but that and later phone calls, she called her boyfriend later on. And all of those things are behavioral of someone who went out, went to a party, had some drinks, and drove when they shouldn't have been driving. But again, that's only speculation. Not really sure. She could have been completely sober. Who knows? And then maybe something else happened. But that's kind of what I'm thinking as I look at this. But it looks like Fred was doing the right thing, just trying to make sure that his daughter was responsible, getting the information, getting the reports for him, and just making sure that it was covered by the insurance. So they recovered everything while they were there. On Monday, February 9th, sometime after midnight, Maura used her personal computer to search MapQuest for directions to the Berkshires and Burlington, Vermont. At 1:00 p.m., she emailed her boyfriend. Her email read, quote, "I love you more, stud. I got messages, but honestly, I didn't feel like talking to much of anyone. I promised to call today, though. Love you, Maura." She then made a phone call to inquire about renting a condo in Bartlett, New Hampshire, that her family had vacationed at in the past. The call lasted 3 minutes, and the association did not rent to Murray. At 1:13 p.m., Maura called a fellow nursing student. At 1:24 p.m., Maura emailed the nursing school faculty that she would be out of town for a week due to a death in the family. The family would later report that there was no death in her family. Maura said she would be in contact upon her return. Maura's family also reported that Maura emailed schoolwork that was due. So it sounds like she wanted to go away and was making some calls, inquiring about some areas to go away, and trying to take care of things at her school while she was going to be away. Of course, she had the white lie, as we say, of saying that there was a death in her family, and that's why she would be gone for a week. But college kids do these kinds of things. So I don't think that this is atypical for a college-age student. At 2:05 p.m., Maura called a number which provides recorded information on booking hotels in Stowe, Vermont. The call lasted 5 minutes. At 2:18 p.m., she called her boyfriend and left him a voicemail that she would talk to him later. This call lasted 1 minute. Maura then packed her car with clothing, toiletries, textbooks, and birth control pills. A search of her dorm room following her disappearance would disclose that most of her belongings had been packed into boxes and the art had been taken off the walls. It was estimated that Maura packed these sometime between Sunday night and Monday morning. On top of the boxes was a printed email indicating trouble in her relationship with her boyfriend. At 3:30 p.m., Maura left campus in her black 1996 Saturn sedan. So there are pictures up on the Motherhood is Murder website of a similar vehicle. So you can see what that vehicle may have looked like. Classes had been canceled that day due to snow. So there had been snow during the day. Classes were canceled. At 3:40 p.m., Maura could be seen on CCTV withdrawing $280 from the ATM. Video shows her wearing a light-colored jacket and what appears to be jeans with her hair pulled back in a ponytail. Family has stated that she must have withdrawn mostly everything she had in her account. She went to a nearby liquor store, Liquors 44 in Hadley, Massachusetts, and purchased $40 worth of alcohol in cash. The contents of her purchase included Bailey's Irish Cream, Kahlua, vodka, and a box of Franzia wine. She was alone during her purchase as well as at the ATM. It is also noted that she cashed out a number of bottles and cans at the Redemption Center in the same plaza. Family noted that she may have been trying to pull as much money as she could before heading out. Before heading out of the area, Maura also picked up the accident report at the RMV. So up until this point, it all looks mostly typical for a college student, as we've been saying. It appears as if Maura was overwhelmed. Remember, she's an ambitious go-getter with a job, full heavy-duty nursing class schedule, athletic schedule, and social life. She was also carrying a lot of emotions about her family's issues. It may have been that she had become overwhelmed and decided she needed a few days to chill, relax, and head to an area that had positive memories for her. She was clearly looking for places to stay in the New Hampshire area and perhaps decided to just wing it and see if she could find somewhere to stay. I have known college students who do this. They just head out and see what they can find. So in today's world of Airbnbs and things like that, this may seem really unusual, but even in 2004, this may have not been as strange as you might think. Perhaps she thought that she could find a motel to stay in that night and then would be able to look for a place to hang out for a while she got up there. So sometimes it's like you just throw caution to the wind. You're like, I'll find a place. And if I don't find the exact place I want to stay for a few days or for the week, I'll just stay at a hotel for, a night. Just pick a cheap hotel, stay there for a night, and then I'll head out and see if I can find somewhere to stay. So it could be that's what she was thinking. She still shows responsibility because she picked up the accident report. It may not have been unusual for her to cash out savings, like almost all of her finances and savings to head up north if it was really important to her. Who knows? So this could be a college student who's overwhelmed that just needs a couple of days alone to herself without anyone bothering her. I mean, she did say to her boyfriend, she just didn't want to talk to people for a little while. Maybe she just wanted to process things that were happening with her sister. Who knows what was going on internally, right? So just giving kind of a benefit of the doubt. I think there's been some speculation that she's just a college kid. She was grabbing alcohol and she was just going up north to party. There's no indication that she spoke to anybody about where she was going. So no indication that she made contact with people online or anything like that about where she was going or called people. So, I mean, certainly it sounds like she wanted doesn't have as much sound that she had a planned party she planned to go to. So, and it didn't sound like she had any clear destination. What's interesting that I found is that she has I don't think we got to that yet, but I'll just give you a little tease, but there's some indication that she was thinking of going to Burlington, Vermont, but the site of her disappearance is not near Burlington, Vermont. So that's just a little tease. We'll get up there. We'll get to that probably very shortly. So it is presumed that Maura left Amherst around 4 or 5 p.m. via I-91 North. Maura called to check her voicemail at 4:37 p.m. Again, there's no indication that she let anyone know where she was going or even actually had a destination herself. She only appeared to be looking to stay about 2 or 3 hours away, which may have felt relatively close to school and to family. So again, I don't think it's unusual that she would have alerted somebody. And if she wanted to be alone, she just probably wouldn't want anyone to reach out for her, right? Maybe she just wanted a few days by herself. At 7:27 p.m. on Monday, February 9th, Faith Westman of Woodsville, New Hampshire, heard a loud thump outside her house. She looked outside to see a car up against a snowbank along Route 112, also known as Wild Amanuset Road. The area where the car had stopped was following a sharp corner near a weathered barn. The car was pointed westbound on the eastbound side. Faith called 911 and reported the car accident. She was directed to the Grafton County dispatcher, who verified her contact information. Although the report of the call indicates that Faith only mentioned that the car was in the road and had been in an accident, dispatcher notes later stated that Faith had reported that she had seen a man in the car smoking a cigarette. This, among other discrepancies, would shine a lot of questions on this case. And we are going to go into more of those questions in part 2. So you can imagine the details of the case take up a lot of time. So that part 2 is going to be into some of those. Thankfully, a lot of these records are available to read fully and completely. So reading those and kind of trying to put some of the timeline together can be very valuable. Later, a passing motorist, a bus driver named Butch Atwood, saw Maura's car and a young woman walking around the vehicle. He later reported that she was not bleeding or visibly injured, but was cold and shivering. He offered to call for help, and she asked him not to call the police and that she had already called AAA. Butch knew that there was no cell service in the area, and AAA later verified that they never received a call from Maura. Butch drove home. He lived just around the corner from the incident, and he placed a call to police around 7:43 p.m. Butch called 911 and was connected to the Hanover dispatch following an all circuits busy response for 911. I find that really interesting. I don't know. I mean, I've had to call 911 a couple of times. I don't think I've ever received an all circuits busy. I don't know if that was more common in 2004 than it is now, but thought that was interesting. The 911 reports had stated that he asked for Grafton County. So when you read the 911 report, one of his first things he asks, he's like, is this Grafton County? And then he reports the accident. So I think he may have even been confused as to where he had been directed to when he called 911. And so he reported that a car had, quote, hit a tree and the airbags were deployed. When asked about injuries, he stated that the woman was shaken, there was no blood, airbags had deployed, and that the car had heavy injury. He also cited the woman was a single female and cited the mile markers around the location of the accident. He also asked why the lines were down in Grafton, but dispatch was not aware that there were any lines down. So that all circuits are busy. Again, it's a kind of weird, because dispatch didn't even know that there was any disruption in their service. So following Butch's call, several cars passed by Maura's car before police arrived. At 7:37 p.m., one local resident said they saw an SUV face-to-face with Maura's car, but did not see anyone inside or outside either vehicle, so they drove home. Haverhill police arrived 9 minutes later. Officer Cecil Smith arrived at 7:46 p.m. Upon arrival, he discovered that the driver was nowhere to be found. No one was inside or outside of the vehicle. The car had impacted a tree on the driver's side with severe damage to the left headlight and a radiator that had been pushed into the fan, deeming the vehicle inoperable. The windshield was cracked, both airbags deployed, and the car was locked. Inside and outside of the car were red stains that looked like red wine. It was also later determined that there was a Coke bottle that had something red in it. It was mostly empty and stained red and smelled strongly of alcohol. The Franzia wine was on the back seat. It was damaged and also opened. There was also an empty beer bottle inside the vehicle. Murray's AAA card, blank accident report form, gloves, CDs, makeup, diamond jewelry, driving directions to Burlington, Vermont, Murray's stuffed animal, and a book called Not Without Peril, which was a book about mountain climbing in the White Mountains, were all in the car. So all of those items were left in the car. Missing from the car were Maura's debit and credit cards. Missing was her cell phone, and missing were the bottles of liquor she had purchased. So none of these items were ever located, and credit cards and debit card and cell phone were never located nor used. There was also a rag stuffed into the tailpipe of the vehicle, which at first appeared unusual, but was later determined to be a method Frank had instructed Maura to do to reduce the amount of smoke coming out of her tailpipe. So let's go back into this. And we're going to be talking about this a little bit more. Apparently, her vehicle was locked. There's been some question whether that's the case or not. Was the vehicle locked? Was the vehicle unlocked? Was it okay for law enforcement to enter the vehicle and look in the vehicle or not? There was a back and forth speculation about if a car is unlocked, can you do that? If it's locked, can you get the car unlocked to get into the vehicle without having any kind of search warrant? So there's a lot of these questions going back and forth. However, still remains that these were the items in the car and there were missing items that were not in the car and items that would have been purchased and potentially been in the car. So according to the Maura Murray website, Officer Smith asked the bus driver, Butch Atwood, who had stopped earlier and had spoken to Maura, to check side roads west of the location near the French Pond area to see if Maura had traveled on foot down these roads. A state trooper also arrived and searched west. Fire and EMS responded, with EMS only staying a matter of minutes before moving on. And the guess is that because there wasn't anyone to treat, they weren't needed on the scene. I've also heard speculation about that, so we'll get into that as well. 8 firefighters searched the scene before turning up nothing of interest and ended up clearing the scene at 8 p.m. At 8:49 p.m., the car was towed to a local garage. And although this might be cited as suspicious, there were no impound lots in the area, so local garages would be used to service this type of incident. The vehicle was then traced to Maura Murray, who was treated as a missing person who may have wanted to disappear voluntarily. There did not appear to be any foul play. So really, it appeared to be an accident on a road with a sharp turn and alcohol in the vehicle. There are a lot of questions as to whether or not Maura had been drinking while she was driving. So drinking the wine that was found in that Coke bottle. And there are some reports that say that Butch Atwood told police that she looked visibly intoxicated. So that could also be a factor. And it was no signs of obvious foul play. There was no blood. There was nothing to indicate that there was anything other than she crashed her car, talked to a couple of people, freaked out, and tried to leave on foot. So Maura was officially determined as missing at 12 p.m. the next day. So she still didn't turn up, still hadn't contacted anybody. No one had seen her. I'll give you some information on a potential sighting that was reported later, but she was determined missing. So later that evening, there had been a potential sighting of Murray, and this was called in after the fact, like after she had been determined officially missing the next day. Between 8 and 9:30 p.m., a contractor returning home thought he saw a young person moving quickly on foot going eastbound on Route 112. This was some 4 or 5 miles east of where Murray's vehicle was found. The individual wore jeans, a dark coat, and a light-colored hood. Atwood had also described Maura as wearing jeans and a dark coat. I mean, just to remind you that on the ATM footage, she was seen wearing jeans and a light colored jacket. Oftentimes, CCTV can kind of change the coloring of what it looks like that somebody's wearing. So that's also been brought up as well. Like perhaps she was wearing a dark coat and it just looked lighter on the CCTV footage. So there's, again, speculation about that. But again, you can change coats, right? So you could be wearing a light coat and switch it to a dark coat. I mean, I think there's possibilities there anyway. But the contractor did not originally report the sighting to police. He was confused on dates. So by the time he heard about the incident, he was confused on the dates and didn't know what day did he actually see this person walking up the street. or between 8 and 9:30 p.m. And then when he looked back on his log, he realized the date coincided with Maura's disappearance. So he contacted the police and said, hey, I might have some information for you if you need it. This is what I saw. So it quite possibly could have been Maura who, I mean, remember, it is snow. There's banks of snow on the road. Not many people walking around, not like it's summertime, right? Between 8 and 9:30 at night in February is pitch black. So, and also depending on what the moon was like, it could have been very, very dark in this area. So to see someone walking quickly on Route 12, possibly. Now we're talking 4 or 5 miles east of where her vehicle was found. We're also talking somewhere between 8 and 9:30. And we're talking about a young woman who can move fast. She runs track. She can run fast. Whether or not she was intoxicated, I'm sure she could move fast and get out of there. And if she was intoxicated, she had every reason to get out of there. Who knows? Maybe the police officer in Hadley had given her a warning and didn't give her a field sobriety test. And she already knew that warning was sitting there. Who knows? And had that in the back of her head. If she was drinking and driving and had yet another accident, she could have just hightailed it out of the area, right? So that's not totally unfeasible or unreasonable in this case. But anyway, this concludes part 1 of the disappearance of Maura Murray. So if you're interested in learning more about the case, right, before going into part 2, of course, listen to part 2 because this is where the investigation kicks in, right? But if you're interested in learning about the case, you can visit the various sources I have in the show notes here. So there's a number of them you can check out. You can check out the Maura Murray website that's also in the show notes. So it gives you some information. You can see some of their reports. You can actually read some of the reports and 911 calls and stuff like that. So that's all interesting. There's also a documentary called The Disappearance of Maura Murray, and it was released in 2020. It's available on Peacock, and you can always watch that. Get to actually see the places we've described where she had gone missing, actually see the people involved in the case, and get that full case information there over a period. It's a series, so there's a period of episodes you get to watch and check that out. But this week, where we leave things off is at the scene of the disappearance, right? We have a car accident that's occurred. One person, Butch Atwood, that has spoken with her, and by the time police arrived, she is nowhere to be found. Looked around, nowhere. Has never been seen since. Possibly has been heard from since. We'll get into that next week, but has not been seen since. So next week, we will dive into the investigation following her disappearance, the emergence of conspiracy theories that still pop up on Reddit to this day, as well as the many questions that have popped up over the years asking the same question. What happened to Maura Murray? Until next time, be good to one another, and we'll see you next week. Do you love the show? Support Motherhood is Murder on Patreon and get some awesome perks, including a shout out on the show, bonus content, and more. We appreciate the support so much, and it allows me to offer a case to you each and every week. Other ways to support the show is to rate, review, and subscribe. I appreciate all the fabulous feedback, and it ensures people will listen and help families who need it most. Motherhood is Murder is researched, written, and produced by me, Valerie Cation. Music by Alexi Action. Check out the show notes for a list of my sources and ways to support your community.